Um, to start, so hopefully everyone can see my screen. If not, please do let me know. But this is an article that obviously many of you have probably read already, and it's one that Scott was featured in. This was for the Financial Times, and I think this one's a great article to kick kind of the conversation off with, because a lot of people have been talking about this, and it's really kind of telling us all the story about the rise of the lockdown celebrity. So Scott, I would like to hand over the word to you, and maybe you can give everyone here a little bit of a recap on the article, and then
Sure.
let's have a conversation.
Sure. Well, thank you very much, Philip. Well, very briefly, so this story came out at the end of Q1, 26th of March. But before I touch on it, I'll scroll back to the end of the Q4, when the same journalist, Hannah Murphy, contacted me sort of late November, early December, about a story she was planning on writing for the Financial Times. And that story was, the thesis for the story was, have we reached peak influencer marketing? And ultimately, the story was published on New Year's Eve, 31st of December. And the tone of voice was, well, first of all, in journalism, there's a well-known aphorism that any headline that ends in a question mark can be answered with no. So have we reached a peak influencer? You can answer that no. It's Betteridge's law. But more substantively, if you, I was very happy to speak with Hannah, and we got on very well. Had a very long conversation, and I followed up with, I said, I enjoy your provocative stance. Here's a whole lot of facts and figures and stats on why it's not peak. And I used the usual, Martin Sorrell with his S4 Capital, the acquisition of influencer marketing agency IMA last summer. Keith Weed, the first, former CMO of Unilever, his first investment post retiring from Unilever was in an influencer marketing platform. 6 weeks after he left Unilever, Unilever announced a 12.5 million investment in another influencer marketing platform. 3/4 of Estee Lauder's advertising spend is now in influencer marketing, and. But that was ignored. Apart from a quote from me at the end saying there are some people that think that there is there are more legs in this industry, and hopefully they're right, because that's our career. But the timbre of that story back at the end of December was talking about influencer marketing. Well, the headline was influencer marketing, but really it was all about celebrity endorsement. And there were quotes like, the get rich quick appeal of digital celebrity. And it talked about the vanity metrics and the vanishing of Instagram likes. And it talked about TV reality shows, and that listed a whole lot of influencers. Where the influencers that were named were Kylie Jenner and Lionel Messi and Selena Gomez and Cristiano Ronaldo. So these are celebrities, and there are musicians, and they're sports people. They are not subject matter experts. Well, they are subject matter experts, but they're lending their name to an endorsement. They're not talking about something that when they come on influencer marketing, when they come on social media and they work with a brand, really the brand is buying their name, not their knowledge and know-how about a subject. So that's the sort of setup. Fast forward to last week, 26th of March, and it's a different story altogether. Now we're talking about subject matter experts. Now we're talking about storytellers. We're talking the headline you can see in the chefs, DJs, teachers. We're talking about Joe Wicks and health and fitness, but we're also talking about English school teachers that are live streaming on Facebook. A spellathon, if you can even imagine it, and Michelin star chefs doing YouTube, IGTV. So it's gone completely from celebrity to subject matter expertise and to storytellers. And the substance of the story was about community and how influencers are at this time building serving their community, not necessarily serving brands, but really, answering in this time of sort of a lockdown and distraction and uncertainty. They're sort of giving quality content to their community.
Mm. Great, thank you, Scott. I think that's great. I have to say though, just before I kick the discussion off, um, I always was under the impression that Joe Wicks was already like a celebrity. That he was already like hugely famous.
Well, yeah, well, he started off 2016, didn't he? So, and
Yeah.
his YouTube channel has been going since 2011. But
Right.
if you look at the figures, certainly the last 18 months, in terms of subscriber growth, it's grown by 3,000 a
Mm,
week consecutively, week after week after week after week after week. Beginning of March, he had 860,000 followers.
yeah.
He acquired 1.2 million followers in the last month.
Yeah.
So he's a subject, yeah. So
Yeah.
yes, celebrity, but really it's on Instagram.
Yeah.
That is his home. That's his home turf.
Right. So
He's
he's
brought
managed to,
he's
I've
brought
known
it up.
from him. He had a book deal a couple of years ago, and he was very famous on this. So he's managed to kind of be from one dimensional to one platform. He's actually made that step now to having kind of a presence on two platforms, and really, really incredibly so. Right.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm not number one card carrying Joe Wicks fan club here, but there, there, there was some blowback on the Gogglebox on Friday
Right.
or
Right.
whatever, saying that he was just cashing in. And
Mm.
and that goes back to the point. He's yet another one of these overnight sensations that's taken 4 years to get to be an overnight sensation, and the hard graft of turning out every day, churning out content every day, and perfecting his. He's obviously a fitness guy, but perfecting his art through social media as well, and
Mm.
creating content that resonates with a specific audience, and so yeah, yes, he's managed to shift channels, but also stay true to what he does
Yeah,
and what he
that's
believes in.
absolutely true. Yeah. Another kind of thing that I noticed in the article as well, and open this up for everyone because I do want it to be kind of that four-way conversation. But I noticed kind of reading between the lines, or they said that Instagram is coming up with a tipping feature. Did you see that? They mentioned it in the article, and I haven't been able to find anything about
No,
it.
and Hannah and I are Twitter chums, and she mentioned it, on Twitter that that exactly to your point, Philip, that no one is kind of picking up on that, but it was kind of an exclusive. I haven't seen anything elsewhere. I
Mm.
think YouTube have something
Either.
similar, but no, I haven't seen it. Artemis, you don't think you haven't seen anything
I
either?
haven't personally come across it myself either. No, there's only other platforms that I know about the tipping feature.
Right.
But,
I mean, it would be really awesome to have it there. I mean, especially now with Twitch blowing up. I mean, it exists to very expensive kind of it's very much there, and it's not yet there on Instagram, but everyone's obviously there at the moment watching, like you said, IGTV, and that's going through the roof. Tom, do you have any questions, any comments on this? Just I want to keep want everyone involved on
Yeah,
this.
I just think that it's just kind of fun to watch because, television largely sucks. Let's face it. I mean, I have cable. I watch a few things on it, and then my wife and I immediately go to Netflix, and then
Mm,
once we're done with Netflix, I usually flip over to YouTube and start scanning around, seeing what kind of cool stuff is being published by people I follow there.
right.
So it's just, television just sucks. So it's really, and I mean, honestly, here in the United States, my wife and I go and watch a lot of BBC News because that's the only way you can get really world news. Otherwise, it's the same old, domestic crap that just
Right.
regurgitated over and over again. So these influencers to me are really filling a void of the kind of content that people want. So
Right.
why not follow some of these guys who are or
Mm,
gals doing these, this instructional videos? That's
I
a
think
hell of
it's
a lot
great.
more. It's just more of a connection. And to me, it's just indicative of the industry just continuing to blow up and explode. I mean, in a good way. I mean, it's constantly expanding. So it's not retracting by any means. Actually, I think right now we're at a point where, you know, we're going to, because of this coronavirus thing, people are being forced online more than ever. And as a result, they're going out and looking for content in places because
Right.
they're bored, and they're
Yeah.
finding influencers they didn't even know about before.
Yeah, I think that's a good segue actually into the question there that I have, because obviously, and again for everyone here, you know, content production is going up. You know, I don't want to share the figures too much. Everyone's seen their reports. You know, started with Italy and Spain, and Facebook even, you know, coming up with their own figures saying, you know, usage is just through the roof. And at the same time, we're also seeing multiple reports come up now. You know, advertising budgets are going down, marketing spend is being put in under review, and I'm kind of curious what you guys think. You know, where is this middle ground? Because the content production going up, but the budgets are going down. Where are we going to land here? Because, you know, there has to be some, you know, a lot of people were talking about influencer marketing. We're talking a lot about opportunity because content quality is going up. You know, like this article says it, you know, new influencers, new celebrities are coming out of nowhere because of this. So where, you know, how can brands that are not necessarily looking to spend a whole lot of money because of the uncertainty, how can they still tap into this? I'm kind of very curious to see what your guys' take is on this. Open the floor.
I'll take the dirty end of the stick. Listen, to follow on from what Tom was saying in terms of television, and you don't care for sort of what's happening on television. You know, programs are, you know, seasons are created or green lighted 6 months, a year in advance. And an influencer, you know, is kind of is the sort of new business development, but also the creation and production, and, you know, and the invoice team as well. It's a whole sort of, it's a media network of one person. So, you know, they know their community, the community is at that, their audience, their following is at the heart of everything they do, right? And so, you know, you as an influencer, you create more of what people like, and you eliminate what people don't like. And you know that from the sentiment of the comments coming back, the numbers of comments coming back, the numbers of watches, the dwell times, you know all of this stuff. And you can be agile and you can react quickly. Television can't react quickly because it's got a whole lot of stuff around it to do that. So that's one, I think, one area where brands can capitalize on influencers and influencer marketing. I also think there is an arbitrage level where it's a lot cheaper than, you know, a lot of traditional media to acquire quality content. You know, and again, you know, it's still sort of, the cost is still low enough to you know, test and learn as you go, make a few small bets, capitalize on what wins, eliminate what doesn't, and carry on and carry on. But I think the other thing is, you know, we're a bit sort of, we're a bit like, you know, rabbits in the headlight now. What do we do? This coronavirus has descended on us. You know, we were told we had to work from home, and we were just doing a test, and then the test was, we're going to work from home next week, and then we don't know we don't know if we're ever going to go back to our office. We don't know if they're going to sublet the office or let the office go. So, you know,
this is my life now.
This is all of our lives now. So we just don't know. So we need to take a deep breath and pivot and recalibrate, and so let's determine what on earth do we do next. Then we decide, my God, we're in survival mode, and it's a knee-jerk reaction to say, I'm not going to spend anything. I'm just going to keep the lights on somehow. I'm going to do it. But the brave ones will put a sizable bit of their market, will retain that market. And there are a few very brave ones which will actually increase their advertising. And there's a whole slew of examples from the last recessions and depressions of people, you know, brands that have become golden when we come out of the recession because they've outspent, because there is this void. You know, you're saying, you know, consumption is going up, but actual revenue, advertising spend is going right down. So you can get extraordinary share of voice by being part of that conversation now. But you're not selling your product; you're selling the purpose. You're selling the reason why. You're selling why your brand should be around. Right, I'm out of here. That's it. That's my.
And I'm
Artemis, yeah, would you like to?
consideration that the influencers are the voice of the brand.
Mm,
So this middle ground is like, if we just look at it from a logistical perspective, you can't go and do photo shoots, you can't have production, people can't be in groups and, you know, et cetera, the traditional type of advertising that making commercials and whatnot. So the influencers are your only way to communicate to your consumers in a more personable way. Before even if you put an ad out, you could go to the Nike store and try that shoe and walk around and talk to someone and, you know, try the different colorways or whatnot. You can't anymore. So I think that, you know, brands are being very careful to ensure that they're communicating in the strongest way possible, yet with sensitivity.
yeah.
So yeah, essentially they are the only voice at the moment for them.
That's true. I mean, I've spoken this about some other people with some other people as well, but some examples, you know, I read on Glossy that some brands are now even putting people in place to personally, like someone from the brand representative will personally respond to a consumer when they direct message them on Instagram, you know, like at the same time, we're also seeing these brands really put their consumers back at the heart of everything, which is also, I think, super exciting because normally, yeah, they wouldn't do that. You know, they just wouldn't pay much attention to that kind of thing. You know, and they even did. I think it was a brand in the West, but they even had. You know, they would strike up a conversation on Instagram, and then even, you know, sometimes it would go to phone conversation. So they would literally call up the consumers and be like, "Hey, you know, how are you doing? What are you watching on Netflix, et cetera, et cetera." So, you know, it's kind of that, you know, that earned, owned, and paid kind of mix where the brands that are going to get the most out of you know, the crisis at the moment, they really need to focus on all three of those. I'm very conscious of time. There's a big side there that says 10 minutes, and we've gone, as predicted, well over that. And I know that I have a lot of articles, but there's at least two I want to cover. So I want to call it a day on this one, and then let's move on to the next one, which click. Can we do this? There we go. The next one, which Artemis, this is you will know more about this article. And I was hoping that you could give us a little bit of a recap, and then
yeah, of course. It actually follows quite nicely from Scott's because I feel Scott's focuses on the influencer side of community, and here with the article that Aaron and Charlotte had written, it focuses more on the brand side of building community, and ultimately, you know, there's a few essential things to take into consideration, such as the brand's core values, which brands have been forced to tap into even more so, and maybe find some new values in the past couple of months as well. Experiment with different types of platforms, different types of format. Brands who have not been very prominent on socials or digitals have had to learn essentially on the spot. And then creating content that goes beyond your feed. So, you know, this content has a bit more of an ecosystem. It can live within an article. It can be shared. It can be even a TikTok challenge that goes beyond and goes more viral. And just creating content that is really honest, raw, and reliable. And I think that, you know, with some of the other articles, which I know we'll be discussing, we'll be going into how brands, why has it taken this pandemic for them to connect more deeply on a more authentic level with their consumers? Now, I'm a bit of a positive optimist. I'm like, well, at least it happens, you know, at least now we're here, at least they're doing it. But yeah, just focusing, trying to take a step back, reevaluate, and try and truly take this period of time, which, as devastating as it is, there is, you know, yin and yang to everything. There's also that positive side of it, which is, you know, you can really take this opportunity to utilize strengthening that relationship. And, you know, there's such a fine line. There's some brands, especially the bigger brands, have spent years building relationships with their consumers. And in this point of time, it can literally just be like a click of a finger where you can lose that consumer for good, or you can retain their loyalty and their trust in you. And that is why I think it's paramount to really consider the type of content you are putting out there, because people are not stupid. They can read between the lines. They can see if you're doing too much of a sales pitch. So yeah, it's it's going to be a challenge, I think, for some brands. For others, it will be second nature. But,
yeah, I think it's interesting what you're saying. I mean, I've thought about this a lot as well, because in a way, like it's a shame that it's had to, that this all us being in this incredibly bad situation has led to brands and influencers being much more audience focused than they have arguably ever been before. But again, like it's a positive in the end. And I think it's super cool as well, because we were so used to, as well, in the media, reading negative articles upon negative articles, and this influencer did this wrong and this influencer did that wrong, and all of a sudden we're reading about the United Nations tapping into influencers, like now they're even working, was it the World Health Organization working with a CGI influencer? Like all the press that's coming out now is so much more predominantly positive. And in a way, like it's the influencer marketing, it's kind of it's giving us a second chance to kind of prove that influencer marketing can truly be used and utilized for good, So I think that is super exciting. And again, absolutely hate the situation, but it is becoming like this, it's getting a lot of good qualities out of a lot of influencers. And I think that's incredibly exciting. Do you think that, so obviously there's, there are brands out there that have already, they had a purpose-led strategy from the get-go, right? And obviously open for everyone, but do you think that they will, they're much more tapped into it already, and they'll find this much easier, and they won't see the same pitfalls as, let's say, brands that are completely new to the purpose-led initiatives and have to really maneuver that very carefully? Do you think they really have that 10-yard start on them?
Yeah, I think so. I think essentially it's putting the effort in now. I think in the long run it will show beneficial to them. I don't think being leading purpose-led is a bad thing, or it's something that they just are forced to do for this short period of time. I think in the long run, they're actually going to be strengthening their relationships with their consumers. They're going to be highlighting their brand values, which I think for a lot of brands have just sort of been swept underneath the carpet, because the only important thing is the next product launch, the next makeup palette, the next shoe that's coming out. So they actually have an opportunity, funnily enough, to be able to revisit those brand values and communicate on a way that I really don't think brands would have done unless we were in this situation, which, you said it's unfortunate, but we are in this situation now, so might as well utilize it to the best.
Well, brands also have to do, more than motivating their consumers, they have to motivate their own employees now. So it's kind of like, which is like, here in the B2B space, we've been talking about this topic, digital transformation, for the past few years, right? And what that is, what it means, and everything else. And it's become one of those terms that's sort of thrown around, and now a lot of people claim to be experts in it, but really aren't, that kind of thing. But really, all brands are now being forced into digital transformation. So what does digital transformation mean? Well, you've got to have more to your company than just selling product, right? You've got to have something behind it. What do you really stand for, right? And I think that's got to be communicated now more than ever, to the employees, the shareholders, and everything else, because there's a lot on the line right now. If we don't get the economy going again, where are things going to be 6 months from now? There's a lot of fear out there. So to Artemis's point, this is a great time for them to jump in and actually mean what they say, rather than just have a tagline or something and pay lip service to something. Now's the time to double down on this stuff and really show your mettle and what you're made of. And one way to do that, to communicate to everybody, not only to the consumers, but is through influencers, right? Start showing your thought leadership, right? You've got to communicate it some way. You can't hold an event anymore, at least not a physical event, right? How many companies hold physical events every year? I mean, it's thousands and thousands of events, right? Whether they're small or large. Well, guess what? You can't do it now. So now it's got to be a virtual event. All right, well, how are you going to communicate something more meaningful to all of your consumers and your constituencies through a virtual event? How are you going to do that? Well, one way to do it is to bring in interesting personalities who can really speak to something a bit differently than you can, right? I mean, I'm not out there reading brand content right now. Are you guys? No, you're watching consumers. I mean, the influencers rather. You're listening to what they have to say, right? Because they're the people that sort of on the bleeding edge of this whole thing. So the whole digital transformation is being forced upon us. Schools are now having to figure out how to educate, right? To the earlier article, I mean, even just through physical fitness, but how do you keep smaller kids, entertained or something while educating them in front of a computer or TV? I mean, there's a whole new, thing going on here that we have to struggle with and adapt to pretty quickly. So, brands are not the only ones. It's educators, the government. The government can offer it mainly through TV, but even then, there's got to be more responsiveness. So I think that now that everybody's online, they're expecting that.
Mm. Not to deviate too much, but you mentioned employers there, right? So, or employees, sorry. And I'm kind of curious. This is just coming because you just said it, but do you think there's, is that gonna be a big thing? Because we're all at home, we're all consuming, or we're all creating content more as well, right? And we're everyday influencers, so obviously our impact is not as much, but these companies have all these employees sitting at home ready to create content. Do you think there's going to be maybe a little bit of a shift in that, where the smarter companies will start to tap into those people and see if they can other, not just their voice, but utilize their and maybe put emphasis on their employees' voices? Do you think that's going to be a thing?
I'd like to think so. I
Mm.
mean, it's already been sort of trending in that direction for a
Mm.
little, for a period of time anyway. But now it's got to be accelerating to a point, because if you think about it, you've got a PR team, you've got your marketing team, and you've got your social media team, right? And all of these departments are trying to put out content on a pretty regular schedule. But a lot of that's been disrupted, because now a lot of the content is dependent upon different events, whether their executives are going and speaking somewhere, or whether it's a conference they're putting on themselves, or a road show. Well, now it's all got to be virtual. So why not leverage your employees and give them a little more free rein, in terms of getting out there and speaking to the constituencies, using their own voice,
Right.
and in that way amplifying the brand voice. So hopefully brands will be embracing this more. You just got to give your employees some guidelines to work on. You don't want the legal department to come in and shut everything down on you.
No, I think there are two things. I think you're absolutely right, Tom. At one end, I think you've got the legal requirements, and at the other end, you've got sort of does it pass the kind of the smell test with your customers. So you want your employees, you want to, as an employer, to help identify the subject matter experts in your teams, and provide them with a voice on social media, help them with the tactics there to do that, so that they can complement your marketing team, but not just aping your marketing team. And yes, at the moment there's an absence of the marketing bit, but you're speaking with a voice that complements. It's not just, you're not just pressing share or retweet or great post from the boss. but you're translating to what it actually means for your customers, and ultimately you're being helpful. What are the top 5 things that you need to know right now? Is that we all know that LinkedIn is kind of the go-to social media professional platform right now, and the algorithm is insanely generous to anyone that wants to show up and create regular content that's halfway decent.
We all know this.
The 4 of us do, but to Tom's point, or to your point, Philip, about it's about helping employees that are already subject matter experts scale that influence online through subject matter through social media.
There's just one other thing that I've noticed regarding that, and that is that in the past few years, some brands have started to force people to produce content. And that is not the way to go. You don't tell people, look, we require a blog post a week, it's got to be posted here. I mean, come on. I mean, that's just ridiculous. Instead, find the people that are really enthusiastic and give them the reins to go out there, give them the tools to go out there and be the advocates.
More of an incentive, right? So more incentive.
I mean, there's all different ways to incentivize them too. The one other aspect to that, now the flip side to that is, I come from the technology industry. So for me, working from home is pretty normal within the industry. So there's a lot of flexibility in the technology industry to do that. But plenty of industries like the insurance industry or the oil and gas industry or other staid industries which are much slower to adopt change are having a hard time with this. And I'm seeing stories online about companies are now monitoring how much time employees are spending at the computer, how available are they on Slack all during the day, and they're sort of policing them, policing their time. Yeah, but at the same time, everybody's been thrust into the situation. And if you're a parent, let's say you're a single mom and you've got 2 kids at home that are like, I don't know, 5 years old and 7 years old, well, you've got to handle them too. I mean, come on, be a little flexible here. It doesn't really necessarily matter when the work product gets done, of course, as long as it meets a deadline. If it's done at 2 in the morning or 2 in the afternoon, who cares, right? But, companies have to start to understand this. You can't police your employees. Produce this now, be tied to your computer 8 hours a day. I mean, that's not going to work.
Yeah. Artemis, I thought you wanted to, I thought we cut you off there.
No. I'm just, I think, I was just saying for it to be organic, and then obviously then more authentic when it's organic. Also, there's just a sense of realism. At the end of the day, putting, marketing, advertising, all of this aside, we're all human beings. And everyone is going through this together. There's going to be difficult days at work. There's going to be difficult days for, CMOs. There's going to be difficult days for the influencers, and days where mental health is a bit lower, days where you're happier, and that affects the type of content you put out. It affects your work ethic, and it's just realism, just being realistic.
Let me ask you guys a question. Somebody brought this up, and I thought it was really kind of interesting, and that is, all right, so influencers are very adept at responding to their audience needs, right? They understand very quickly what the audience likes, doesn't like, and what they want to see more of, so they're able to double down on that.
Yeah.
Why are brands not able to do the same thing?
Well, I think because it's an influencer is almost by definition is a media masthead of one.
Right. Yeah.
When the creative director, i.e. the influencer, has an idea, it goes to the CEO. It goes to the CEO, i.e. the same guy, and gets it done. So so there is. You don't have to. There's not this chain of command, and also in reality, the larger an organisation gets, the more politics are involved.
Yeah.
True.
Don't always make the optimum decision based on customer, but on a whole myriad of considerations.
Which is arguably one of the main reasons why brands love to work with influencers, right? There is no chain of command that they have to go through. There are no there's not a whole 10 people that they have to discuss and it's just that influencer. They're lean, they turn things around fast, they're efficient, they're effective, and they know what their audience wants done. It's enjoyable to work with a structure that works that way.
There are challenges.
Go ahead, Artemis. Go ahead.
Thank you, Artemis. Yeah. Go ahead. I think we'll say the same thing.
There are often challenges as well, but yes, there's less dependence, different KPIs. Finance is not breathing down your neck, and brands, especially the larger brands, have some different pressures, I think, as opposed to the turnaround and influencers to respond in real time to any comment that's put up, or Yeah.
I'll just add one more thing to that. I agree with everything you guys said. The one thing I will say is that I find influencers tend to really, a lot of them that I know tend to dig into their data quite a bit and pay attention to it. So they're pretty cognizant of what's working and what isn't. I have encountered, I can't tell you how many brands that don't do the same. They don't look at the data much. Really, they don't. I mean, they're happy just churning out the same stuff, and they're not really paying attention to too much of the data, which baffles me, because if you're spending that much money churning out content, you'd think that they'd be a little bit more determined to look into that data carefully and to see what's working and when it's not working and to adjust.
Is there a particular industry brand that you're thinking of? Because just from my own experience, obviously we work very closely with brands. I actually think that in the past, I'd say year and a half especially, brands have become even more obsessed with the data.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Just
specific sectors especially, right?
Yeah, especially I'd say FMCG, fashion, beauty.
Absolutely.
Because the results are not that tangible. It's not like sales or conversion. Often when you engage an influencer, you're looking at the perception, the awareness, the engagement rate. And then if you do any swipe up links or whatever, then conversion could come into it if you're tracking links. But I'm actually finding that brands are becoming a lot more savvy with it. They want to know, they want to see, if I can't say that, 100 grand was made, then I want to know exactly by what percentage has perception of the brand gone up, brand consideration, awareness, etc.
Agreed.
Well, okay. Point well taken. Yeah, you guys, some of you guys operate more in the consumer space than I do. In the B2B space, I'm not going to mention any names, but I'll just tell you in my experience, they just concerned with churning out the content. They don't spend too much time analyzing the data. And when I've queried different teams at different companies about, well, are you guys looking at the data to see what's resonating with the audience? Well, yeah, so yeah, well, we look at Sprinkler and whatever else, and I'm like, really? That's it? I mean, come on here. I mean, every company right now, to Tom Feremski's point, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the former Financial Times journalist Tom Feremski, runs Silicon Valley Watcher, I think.
Watcher,
a pretty sharp guy. He said like 10, 12 years ago, every company is now a media company. Right. And really, I mean, is that any more, obvious than now when we're all being forced to work from home and things have to be done online, the content creation and curation is being shifted. So it's a completely different model that we're operating under now, thrust upon us. So every company is a media company. You'd think that they'd be analyzing their results very carefully. I'm just baffled as to why they don't, because it's really pretty simple to do. It's not hard, and there are plenty of tools to do it. It's not that expensive.
I think to Artemis's point, I don't want to speak for you, but it's kind of what we just said. It's the feedback loop is smaller when it's one person. But I think certainly in the B2C space, because of competition is fierce, certainly the last 18 months, there are lots of brands are very hot on this, and it's not, whether where 3 or 4 years ago, people were bedazzled by number of likes or number of comments, that no one in their right mind gives a hoot about that. It's about it's all the things that Artemis has just said.
Yeah. Okay, I want to just, we basically, that was 45 minutes. So I just want to give people a heads up. We will be recording this, as Tom said, so we'll upload it and I'll be sure to email it to people. If you need to bow out, then feel free to leave. Guys, do you want to keep going? I have one more article that I'd like to
I'm
discuss
happy
with you
to.
guys. Yeah. Also on this one, I do have a last question. And just to kind of hypothesize, do you guys think that do you think all of this is going to create meaningful change, long-lasting change within the influence marketing industry, or do you think that once this is all over, it's going to be back to normal? Do you think that this will really have a long-lasting impact?
I think it will be long term, just because the fact that consumers are having such a say at the moment with the way brands are advertising and the content they are putting out, that the brands are almost like on their tiptoes of how we're communicating. Are we going to be boycotted by this consumer for what we posted? That I think this is really like precious at the moment, because what they're learning is that instead of just responding to the competition, their competitors, they're now responding to consumer a lot more heavily. Before it used to be like, oh, I don't know, Adidas has just launched something, so Nike has to launch something, or Coca-Cola's launched something, so Pepsi has to have a new drink out. But now it's, are the consumers talking about us? Are they still purchasing online? Are they still sharing our posts? And because they're responding to the consumers now, I think that's not something you can ignore, because if you just revert back, then if anything, you just look more like a fake and a phony now to consumers. So you can't really risk that, essentially. I don't know, my opinion.
No, I think it's a good point. Scott, Tom?
Long-term change. I think that, we're not going to come out of this without some of that in the industry for sure. I think just societal wise, there's going to be change too. I mean, does anybody want to rush back to a football stadium and watch a game with 80,000 other people? I don't know. I mean, I think there's everybody's got the heebie-jeebies a little bit now about being around too many people. I don't know. I think that there's going to be long-term impact in a lot of different ways. So certainly in the industry.
I think for influencer marketing specifically, well, hopefully, obviously, it's our careers. So hopefully, it's a long-term uptick in our favour. But I think we're seeing, and we've seen this in this last quarter, that the same tactics involved in influencer marketing, but different outcomes. And so whether it was at the beginning of March with Michael Bloomberg and working with influencers and meme accounts, or for political campaigning, or whether it is Dr. Ranj Singh here, former CBBC, Strictly Come Dancing, explaining. And a London doctor at a hospital, a London hospital doctor, explaining to his 200,000 Instagram account what coronavirus means to you in a language that we can all understand. Or whether it's distraction, or whether it's how to keep fit, or it's how to make a meal from whatever in your larder. We are seeing different applications of influencer marketing beyond selling stuff. Absolutely. Yes, it's great at selling stuff, but all of the push has been on, how does it move the needle on selling stuff in the last infinitum. Now we're seeing different applications. So hopefully that will stick. And you raised earlier, Philip, that United Nations is reached out to that CGI influencer.
Yeah.
He's got 1 million followers. So that, it was a fad last year. We all talked, and little Michaela, it's been a fad. Is she real or isn't she real? She's been around since 2018. It'll start to be normalized. All of these, different facets of influencer marketing. But it's beholden upon us as practitioners to really double down on the lexicon about what influencer marketing is. And you know, and so as we just to remind us where we started this conversation, the Financial Times at Christmas was talking about influencer marketing, but actually it meant celebrity endorsement. You know,
Right.
Tom, you said very eloquently talking about B2B influencer marketing, but is it about advocacy? You know, is it about influencer marketing relations? You know, what happens when you do put some brand spend behind it as well? What we need to be able to everything goes underneath that umbrella, but we need to tease the different definitions apart so that we can push our industry forward.
Absolutely. Well
I
said.
like that. Yeah, like that.
Well said. All
I'm
right.
available all week.
Right. All right. So we'll do one more, and again, you know, if you have to leave, feel free to. But there is one more that I kind of would like to talk to. Is it this one? It's this one. So this one's it ties into kind of what we've been talking about, and I don't know if you guys have read this, but it was kind of an interview with the CMO at Anheuser-Busch, and what they're saying is they're taking their investment away from digital and or from TV, and they're moving it into digital, right? So they're not in advertising mode at the moment, is what they're saying, right? So that, you know, TV, it's moving away from TV, it's going to digital. They're focusing on 3 different principles. So you know, taking care of their people very much, you know, first point, providing normalcy for their consumers, and the third one's very important, you know, adding value to society, which I think is incredibly important. And also, you know, if you're in Anheuser-Busch, that's something, you know, you have the means to do that. So, you know, they're obviously trying their best to do that, and they're contributing very positively already. You know, they're using their production line for hand sanitizers. They're working together with the Red Cross, and I don't know if you guys have read about this, but they've even started something in the UK called Save Pub Life. So they're saying, because all the pubs are obviously closed, which is a huge thing here in the UK, obviously, pub
Yeah.
life. And basically they're saying, you know, you can purchase kind of a gift card at your favorite pub, so that when everything gets back to normal, knock on wood, you can, you know, buy your pint again. And then, so basically you're paying their pub in advance, so they have some money coming in, right? And they're matching the investment up to $1 million, which is fantastic, right? I think it's a great initiative, and I think it's showing that they're doing well towards the community. Again, their focus very much being on owned media, admitting that they will put the occasional paid behind specific initiatives. They will do that. Now, what I'm interested in from your perspective, what are your first thoughts? Like, what do you think about this shift? And I know, Tom, you just mentioned, you know, I hate TV, you know, and this is forcing, you know, Anheuser-Busch to rethink their spend, and this shift kind of is very important, and they're focusing very much on this consumer-centric messaging. You know, if you check out their Instagram, I would highly recommend you do that. They have a hashtag set up. They're repurposing user-generated content. They're having conversations with their consumers. They're really pushing this very, very hard, and I think it's incredible. But I would love to hear your guys' thoughts and your take on this as well. Whoever wants to go first.
I'll have a crack. I'm conscious that I've done a lot of the talking, but I'll just wave your hand when you want me to shut up.
You have a very soothing voice, Scott.
Yeah, yes, you do.
You mean you're nodding off? That's no compliment at all.
Nodding off.
Listen, I think you gotta follow the money, and you follow where your audience is.
Yep.
And you know, I haven't got any data in front of me, but I would imagine that, you know, the core drinkers are late teens up to about 30 years of age. I would guess. And you know, television numbers are going down, and the television viewers are graying. Newspapers are graying. You know, the average age of someone watching a free-to-air free-to-air television program in the UK is around in the late 50s. You know, BBC Two, ITV, even the young pup, you know, E4 in the UK is a late 40s. So if you're trying to target the late teens through the 20s, early 30s, they're not there. They're not reading newspapers. So where are they? They're online. So that's where that's that point. The other point, you're saying about society at large, all business is in business to stay in business. That's a given, but that's not the purpose of their business. And long-term gain for any business relies upon your employees, we've talked about earlier, Tom. But it's about your customers for sure. It's about your prospects for sure. But it's about all the publics, circulating that brand as well. Are you doing right for them? And whether you call it conscientious capitalism or whether you call it being long-term greedy, you're in it for the long term, and people expect now increasingly, especially Gen Z, they expect brands to do right by them, and they will vote with their feet if they don't.
Well said. Tom?
I think it's encouraging, to just kind of echo what Scott said. I mean, they're watching where their customers are, and they're trying to respond to that. And to Artemis's earlier point, I mean, if you're going to create a TV commercial, there's all these different people that are involved in doing that. So it's like you got to go to a studio, and you got to have these people and those people and writers and everything else, and blah 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 blah. It's kind of a complicated process. Going directly to influencers, for instance, is a lot easier, and it's a lot more cost effective. And you can kind of segment the audience out depending upon what influencers you're hitting up. So to me, it makes a lot of sense. I'm encouraged by stuff like that, because to me, I see TV as sort of a dying animal. I don't think it'll ever really go away. It's kind of like magazines. There's always a magazine lying around somewhere, right? I mean, we are physical beings. We do like to flip through things. So I don't think it's totally going to go away, but I think that this is encouraging, because to me, I see it as a smart move to shift assets from one place where it's really perhaps not performing that well, and it's more difficult to get the content generated, and then shift it to digital. It's a lot easier to get the content generated, a lot less effort, more cost effective, and you can also parse it out and figure out which audiences you really want to go after with whatever particular initiative it is that you're pushing at that time.
Artemis, do you want to add something to this?
I just agree. It's, to be honest, it's just logical.
Right.
I think you just have to look at where your consumers are consuming their content. I mean, it's one of the challenges we always face with clients as well, where especially with influencer marketing being such, I'd say maybe 3-4 years ago, it was still an unknown. The CMOs are very happy to spend money on TV ads where you didn't really know exactly what the conversion was, but also because influencer marketing was something new, unknown, they were like, no, I need to have results. I need to know exactly what the conversion is. I need to know exactly, where my money, the return on investment. And it's like, well, you don't really know. The same as you didn't really know, apart from some tiny metrics with TV. But the majority of the people are consuming their content through their phones, through iPads, through their laptops, and it just seems logical, really, to translate your activation.
I'll just say, my son is 16, and I watch what he does in terms of what kind of content.
Not in a creepy way, though, Tom.
No. I know, no. I mean, well, where does he go to find what he needs?
Right.
I think that he goes to YouTube a lot. He doesn't watch movies. He doesn't find them particularly engaging. So I have to usually say to him, hey, why don't you watch this movie with me? It's a really good one. So for instance, the other night we watched Escape from New York, which is an old sci-fi movie with Kurt Russell in it. And it's a fun movie. And, he was like, yeah, that's a cool movie. That's a cool movie. But I mean, he won't go out of his way to sort of find them. He'll just go on YouTube or chat with his friends and, I don't know, play some game or something. And it's just a whole different media experience for his age group than it was for mine. So there's these different demographics that are out there, and I think that you can, like I said, you can parse it up. You could figure out, do I need to go for the older demographic, older women, older men, or do I need to go more middle aged? Do I need to go more younger skew? And if it's all out there, And you can do it through digital in multiple ways. And influencers, one of those ways. And it's a wonderful way to do it, in my opinion. And I think that having a person talk about your brand or your product, nothing beats that. Really,
Yeah.
nothing beats that, right?
Sure. That's a
I
good
mean,
point.
do any of you guys, let me put it this way, do any of you ever buy a book without reading some reviews of it before you buy it?
Sometimes, personally, sometimes.
Oh,
But
Artemis, you're a holdout.
well, I'll read the back of I'll read the blurb. I'll read
Yeah,
the book. But
I've done that too. You don't always have, if you're in a bookstore, you don't always have the opportunity to, go for it and look up reviews. I have to say though, when it comes to books, I'm definitely a sucker to, recommendations when it comes to that. If anyone tells me, oh, you should read this book. If a friend tells me to read a book, I will read a book. Like no matter, I might hate it, but I'll read it because they recommended it and I trust them and that's what I'll do. So, I won't even read a review. I'll just do it. That's the way it works. I do have one. We could do this question, but the cynic in me is kind of Anheuser Busch. They're not doing badly currently, right? I mean, their alcohol consumption is arguably going up, both here and across the bond. Globally, I would venture to say, perhaps. And we're seeing the same, with Nike, Lululemon, et cetera, et cetera. You see these people, these brands doing really well, and potentially, riding this wave of natural consumption going up, that they have that kind of luxury to focus on purpose, right? They don't necessarily, maybe advertising for them is already being done, and because people are consuming it more. And that's kind of the devil's advocate here, but do you think that, this is hypothetical, but do you think Nike and Anheuser-Busch, do you think they would be responding to this differently if they weren't in that industry that was naturally already doing well during this pandemic?
I just made a note there as you were talking to say that I think something that we forget to take into consideration is these are big companies, the ones I'm mentioning. They already have their audience. So whether they decide to go for a value, purpose-led messaging or not, they have that audience there to communicate to. I think that's something, with my colleagues, we were discussing this week actually about local initiatives and independence at the moment, and trying to support your independent stores and businesses around you. And we just forget that they sometimes don't have that audience, and it's a lot more of a struggle for them. So analyzing these bigger companies is interesting to see the shifts that they have made. But I think there is also a reality that there's independent, smaller companies which are really, really suffering, but have great services or products.
Very true.
That's where I think people like us come into play to really, to the best of our capabilities. You can't help everyone, but to also help those who maybe don't have the ability to communicate the way the bigger.
Absolutely.
True. Very true.
That's very true. Yeah, because it's easy, exactly. It's easy for Nike to do that and say that they have millions of people, loving their product already. But if you're a small independent or, like a restaurant or a pub, then it's really going to hurt. And then we can say, do purpose. But, they might not have enough, they might not have enough reserves to do purpose for a couple of months and come out of this the other way. It's really challenging, and I think there's different ways to tackle that. And you're right. These examples are definitely coming from up top. So I think it's a different conversation when you're much smaller. Absolutely.
Maybe that's the next call. The topic for the next call.
Right. There's so much.
Something great I'm seeing is though that actual influencers and celebrities are starting their own initiatives as well at the moment to help these smaller companies and businesses. And actually something that I've noted, don't know if you guys have seen, but Duty to Care, the bloggers for NHS. At the moment, there's a group of bloggers, including Fleur de Force, and they're selling their clothes on eBay in order to raise money to be able to assist health workers for counselling and helping their mental health at the moment. So the influencers themselves are also taking initiatives to help where they can too.
And
great to see.
I'm seeing a lot on LinkedIn as well, people trying to help out influencers as well, with trying to get them to get opportunities as well, which is, kind of seeing that LinkedIn community come together as well. I think I just noticed that there's like a chat, and I think Mark, I just noticed this because it picked up, but I'm just seeing Mark. Hi, Mark. How are you doing? So Mark is saying, one thing I will say on the purpose-led initiative we're seeing at the moment is that some brands truly lead the way using their values to help others, and other brands see it as a PR opportunity, as not doing something is bad PR. Take Pride, for example. Brands bring out the rainbows every year for a month, but then what are they doing day in, day out for that community? The brands that are showing it every day are the ones who really show their values. And I think that we can see this in brand response to COVID-19.
That's a good point.
Yeah, very good.
I think that's it. That I put it in my trends for 2020 that the purpose-driven influencer marketing will be a big thing, but to be careful that it's not woke washing or greenwashing or whatever. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. To Mark's point, you can stick a rainbow logo or a unicorn or whatever. That doesn't make you really, that doesn't. Yeah, it has to be part of your brand's purpose, your brand's DNA, and increasingly we're gonna call that out. You can't just be an expert or one day a year. It has to be part of you 365. And I think a stat you shared earlier, Philip, was about the Edelman Trust.
Right.
Robert,
we have that somewhere.
Yeah, they did a snap poll in there, 12,000 people, I think, and that showed you that what brands expect. And GfK did something similar in mid-March. A smaller sample, but the GfK one said that 73% of consumers expect brands to be doing the right thing.
Right. Yeah.
So it's about not just saying you're going to do these wonderful things, it's actually doing these wonderful things, and keeping on doing it. Not, what they say about character is it's doing the right thing when you don't think anyone is watching you. So you don't have to overly comms it, just get on and do it, do the right thing.
Very good point.
Yeah.
Guys, I'm so conscious of our timing and haven't gone over by 10 minutes already. Shall we, I think we should wrap it up. I have the deck here, which, I'm happy to send it through. It was more like, just a guideline for us, but I'm happy to send it through if anyone wants it. We'll record this. Yeah, this is being recorded, so we'll make sure to upload it so that people can listen to it. I mean, is there anything you guys would like to add? This was, again, first time, so probably a little bit rough around the edges, definitely went over time, not as structured as I'd, like it to be, but I think it was very interesting, and I like having this kind of conversation, very open-ended, just shooting, being informal, and I think that's kind of cool, and hopefully we'll make this a habit. Especially now during lockdown, where we kind of, I'm doing this with other people as well, that kind of weekly or bi-weekly catch up where, you're talking to people about the industry that are from the industry, and you're venting and you're discussing and you're theorizing. And I think it's super interesting, and hopefully the people in the room will find it of value as well. And then we can keep this going and, rotate, bring new people in one week, bring other people, and then, have a bit of a community around this as well, which I think would be really cool, especially now in the current time. So if you guys, anyone else has any closing notes, otherwise we'll call it a day here, and then hopefully we'll see you on a different Talking Tuesday.
Yeah, man, sounds good.
Awesome. Right. Thank you very much for inviting me along today.
Absolutely. All right, guys. I hope you have
I'll
a
see-
lovely evening.
I'll see you for
Alrighty.
episode 100. Take care, guys.
All right. See
Later.
you later, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.